Now today we are doing harsh speech. So this is now the last speech, right, that we have to avoid. Harsh speech. Important to know again in detail why the Buddha asks us to refrain from it. You might think that it is easy to refrain from harsh speech. Is it? Now, the Dhamma-inspired series is structured in this sequence. And as a reminder, we only are looking at why and how we exercise restraint and abstention only. The last two talks on right speech series, which may be at the end of the year, will be focusing on how we can improve in our verbal communication with others, and that will be under the do good part. And then lastly, we will also see how right speech plays a part in our overall mental cultivation to see things as they are and vice versa, and that will be under purify the mind, and that will be probably towards the end of the year. For this week and next week, we are covering abstinence from harsh speech to wrap up the topics of abstention. Again, we will cover 4 sections to be very detailed. We will start off the definition. Then we look at the motivations. It's important to do so because if not, how are you going to overcome harsh speech? Then we're going to talk about why we should avoid harsh speech. Finally, we go on to the how. Definition, we start with that. Again, please read the definition on your own here. Harsh speech is any kind of verbal communication that deliberately causes harm to others and harm to ourselves. The Buddha's teachings was only on spoken words because at that time, that was the only form of verbal communication for most people. It is very different now. The definition of harsh speech, whether it is falsehood, divisive speech, harsh speech, or idle chatter, includes both spoken words as well as non-verbal cues like the tone of your voice, facial expression, gestures, and body language. Let us look at the words used to describe harsh speech. Rough, no finesse, no tact. Lacking the soft skills, that's hard. Well, it's hurtful, you have affected other people. Offensive, provoking others to stir up negative feelings. And see here, unconducive to concentration for yourself and others. Means that the speech disturbs and agitates the mind, making it very difficult to meditate, isn't it? People who use harsh speech normally will have ill will and hatred, which is one of the 5 hindrances to obtaining samadhi. Samadhi is a state of mind that is very clear, stable, quiet, soft, a state of mind used for vipassana or Dhamma investigation, a mind that can lead you to fruition or the first stage of enlightenment, a mind that can lead you to insight. Now, harsh speech can be divided into 3 main groups according to their predominant features. It will include abusive speech, speech that scolds, criticizes, characterized by bitterness, anger, and coarse language. Insults, speech that's insensitive, demeaning, and rude. Sarcasm, speech with ironic intent to ridicule or express contempt. There are, of course, overlaps. Negativities like anger, rudeness, and contempt can be found in all 3 groups. And based on these, harsh speech therefore covers a whole spectrum of unskillful communication, ranging from these. One that is frustrated or irritated, rude, critical, denigrating, insulting, and sarcastic. To swearing and fierce quarrels. People swear for different reasons. Some people swear to express intense emotions, some in response to pain or misfortune. But the type of profanity that is considered harsh speech is that which is intended to offend, intimidate, or degrade a person. So now we know the definition. Let's look at the motivations. We need to know motivations before we can effectively read of it, harsh speech. Now, we should all know by now, right, after listening to the other Dhamma Bites topic on false speech, divisive speech, and idle chatter, that harsh speech arises because of what? The three roots of evil, right? And what are the three roots of evil? Yes, greed, hatred, and delusion. That is based on what? Based on the sense of self. So for the benefit of revision, let's visit Lobha, Dosa, and Moha. They are the three unwholesome roots that underlie all our actions as long as we are not enlightened. Even if they do arise in response to suitable causes and conditions, they are still, all right, present in us. All right, even if we do not, there are no suitable causes and conditions, we'll always have these, and these will be eliminated once we are enlightened. It's just a level. Lobha, the wanting, a mental state that drives us to pursue sense objects through our six sense bases that will give us the pleasant feeling. Next, all right, is the dosa. When we want something and we can't get it, dosa arises. It is also when we resist unpleasant feelings, dosa also arises. Aversion of any kind, however slight. Next, of course, delusion. And as long as we have a perception of self, the ego, that performs both unwholesome actions and wholesome ones, we have delusion. And these three evil roots in us, unless we are enlightened, will give rise to all the negative mental states, examples of which are shown here. Ignorance and craving, which are our obstacles to enlightenment, is represented by these three defilements. Lobha and dosa arises out of craving, and without delusion that a self exists is therefore ignorance. We will now look at the four common motivations or intentions behind harsh speech, which arises from our three best friends. I call greed, hatred, and delusion our three best friends. Now, we commit harsh speech, right, because we believe that it is the only way of getting what we want. This is lobha, the desire to fit in, to be accepted, to be popular, or to be hooked up to. Now, you might find this strange, but a study done in US actually found that there is a belief that the nicer or more agreeable a person is at work, the lower his or her salary is likely to be. In another study, it was found that many employees believe that aggressive managers who blame others when things go wrong are more likely to get promoted than managers who feel guilty and accept responsibility for failure. A wrong belief like that will certainly encourage harsh speech at work. Sometimes we do not get what we want from the other person. We take it out on that person because of our perception that he or she is to blame. This is usually the case with harsh speech. And many a times we rationalize harsh speech as justified and necessary because we feel that we are doing it for the person's benefit. Next, action prompted by pre-existing negative mental states. Now, this is more complicated because it is both an action to get something as well as an action due to unfulfilled needs. For instance, bullying. Studies have shown that people who bully others are likely to have experienced some stressful or traumatic events in their lives, or have more likely experienced being bullied or have difficult home lives. As a result, they have problems with anger management, they have low self-esteem, and may also have depression, anxiety, or other emotional problems. Whatever the reason, bullies dominate, blame, and use others because they get a respite from feeling helpless in their suffering when they overpower others. They get a boost in their self-esteem, and they get attention which they do not get otherwise. In short, they use harsh speech as the only way they know then can get what they want, which is self-importance, a sense of purpose, and attention. Even when a person is not naturally inclined towards such behavior, a desperation for acceptance can make a person succumb to peer pressure to verbally abuse others. At the same time, the act of bullying itself is an expression of unmet needs, which is love, safety, and happiness both within and outside home life. So please do not fear bullies. And lastly, harsh speech is very often promoted as a retaliation to similar speech that is directed at us, right? That is also an expression of unfulfilled needs. The need for respect, for understanding, or just basic courtesy. Just for the need for communication that is not harsh. So it's like ya huan ya. Now, these four motivations behind harsh speech can therefore be reduced to just two motivations, right? An action to meet one's needs, or a verbal expression of unmet needs, which is lobha and dosa, that is based on moha. So we come back to our three best friends. We know that lobha and dosa is craving for what things should be and craving for what things should not be. Where does craving or tanha found in the Four Noble Truths? The craving for being or wanting, that is bhava tanha, and the craving for non-being or wanting by not getting it is vibhava tanha, is the cause of suffering, right? Second noble truth. And who wants and who does not want? Who likes and does not like? It is the self. The craving arises because we take everything so personally. Then there are times when speech may appear to be harsh, but the intentions behind them are not meant to be that way. Give you an example. Mei Shi Kiao, a Thai nun, had extraordinary psychic abilities. When she meditated, she would have visions of other realms and communications with their inhabitants. Now, Ajahn Mahabhuana, who came into contact with her later in her life, realized that did she not yet have sufficient control over her mind to meditate safely on her own. He advised her to do to do right concentration and to stop having these extra sensory adventures during meditation. But she refused to listen and kept arguing with her teacher. Ajahn Mahabhuana insisted again and again, but she stubbornly held to her own views. Now, when you have psychic powers, you have this big sense of self, right? So in the end, Ajahn had no choice but to become really fierce. He raised his voice, he uttered harsh and fiery words and ordered Mei Shi Kiao to leave and never return. Mei Shi Kiao was left devastated and in tears. But her teacher did this out of good intentions. She reflected on her actions and eventually realized that her own conceited attitude was to blame. And because of this, she was determined to redeem herself and later penetrated the truth. Now, this kind of speech is called nigeha, which is defined as a justified rebuke of wrongdoing. However, from an audience point of view, nigeha and parusavacha may seem exactly alike. The difference between them lies entirely in the intention behind the harsh words. Is it an intention to reform or to wound? Only a teacher or mentor that is skilled in Dharma and a bit of psychology might have the ability to use harsh speech to train or counsel others. The other example is Ajahn Chah. His speech could sometimes be coarse and seemingly hurtful, but the intent and the effect on the monks or lay people were unusually beneficial. Now, on the flip side, a gentle remark with evil intentions will cause more harm than words spoken harshly, is it not? This was what ancient kings used to say when ordering executions. Apart from these two exceptions, all these verbal actions are, as the Buddha described, rough, hard, hurtful to others, offensive to others. They are defined by the intentions behind them, which are based on just two things. Recap: wanting, bhava tanha, and not getting what you want, vibhava tanha. The important thing to note is that in most cases, we commit harsh speech because we do not know a better way to handle a situation, which we will explore later. In conclusion, never blame something or someone because you exercise harsh speech. It comes from you wanting to fulfill a need or due to your unmet needs. You look inwards. Next, we examine why we need to avoid harsh speech. Whatever the action and the motivation, harsh speech is never fruitful, brothers and sisters. Even if we do get what we want from harsh speech, it's never given willingly or with goodwill. With harsh speech, conflicts will never get resolved to the satisfaction of both parties. Instead, it causes conflicts, and if there is already conflict, harsh speech makes it worse. Because both speaker and receiver end up experiencing only negative mental states like these. Why is that? When people hear themselves judged, criticized, or analyzed, they see it as an outright or implied accusation that they are in the wrong. Speech targeted at a person's faults cause defensiveness and very often retaliation, also in the form of harsh speech. Now let us look at the dialogue between husband and wife. How many times have I asked you not to leave the dishes in the sink? Why do you keep doing this? Can't you see that I'm trying to finish this assignment? Why does everything have to be done according to your time schedule? Doesn't mine count? Now stop nagging about this. I'm not nagging. I'm telling you that I don't want to clean up after you. When did I ever ask you to do that? I always clean up after myself. The difference is that you're compulsive about it and I'm not. I can't talk to you. You discount what I say. Now, brothers and sisters, this is harsh speech, right? You think both husband and wife can meditate after this exchange? In our everyday life, we meet with conflict very often. This kind of conflict, like this one, that are not actually quarrels, but exchanges of hurtful remarks. So harsh speech is prevalent in households. Well, harsh speech is not about screaming and shouting at another person. So let's compare it again against the definition by the Buddha. Now, it does qualify as harsh speech because it is rough, lacks finesse and tact, right? It is hard, lacks compassion. It is hurtful. It is offensive, causes displeasure and resentment, and it provokes anger. A lot of fault finding here, which puts a person on the defensive and usually makes him strive to justify himself and push the blame back to the speaker. And in the process, arousing negative emotions like anger, resentment, and indignation. Now, harsh speech is often committed when you blame the person for your unmet needs. And not only that, you also blame the person for negative mental states that arise because of your unmet needs. When the mind is filled to negativities, empathy cannot arise, right? With no empathy, the receiver of harsh speech will not have a chance of having his needs heard. At the same time, is it not? It is difficult for the speaker to express his or her own needs when the mind is directed at finding fault with others. It is very difficult to resolve conflict this way. Now, the matter of contention between the husband and wife is about dirty dishes in the sink. Wife assumed that husband expected her to clean up after him. And when he did not want to clean up the dishes, she assumed he dismissed her wishes. The husband reacted to her assumption with one of his own, that she was compulsive, obsessive with keeping the house clean. But unfortunately, these needs were not communicated. Now, what exactly are the needs? To keep the house clean. To be given the assurance that he will help out in the household chores. These will be the wife's needs. And what about the husband's needs? To be trusted to shoulder his share of household chores. To be given freedom to complete the chores as and when he's able to. Okay? So we will see how we should communicate with each other next week. Now, what we have seen is a form of bickering that is commonly found in households between spouses and also among relatives, friends, and even at the workplace. At the end of the scale, harsh speech can actually lead to war and the loss of life. In this book, Living Non-Violent Communication, Marshall Rosenberg gave an example where two tribes in Nigeria had legitimate grievances but failed to connect with one another. Now, both sides were filled with their own dukkha, suffering, due to unmet needs, and blamed the other side for the suffering they went through. Accusations along these lines flew back and forth, leading to a war that saw 1/4 of the population killed. Harsh speech therefore prevented both sides from communicating their needs to each other, which was simply this: need for safety and assurance that whatever conflicts there are going on will be resolved by some other means other than violence. Need for equality, need to feel that they are being treated equally in the community. Which is very different, is it not, from what they said, because they used harsh speech. Then is it possible to use speech that appears to be harsh but not brought on by other unwholesome or wholesome intentions? That means you use harsh speech but you have neutral intention. This is not the way to do so for two reasons. First, all right, speech spoken this way can develop into a habit, which means that you may end up adopting this manner of speaking, whether you mean it or not. For example, phone calls. You know, I'm always with this friend, and I will know whether my friend takes a call from the husband or from a client. When she takes a call from the client, it's very clear. It'll be like, oh yes, hi, yes, yes, okay, we'll do. Okay, we'll talk later. I'm not free now. But when it's the husband, it'll be, hello, yeah, what is it? I'm very busy now, no. Yalla, we'll talk at home. Okay, habitual. Number two, it may appear to be comically neutral action, but more often than not, the speech carries an element of ill will, no matter how slight it is. The seed of ill will or anger may develop into something more to eventually define your character. This same applies to swearing. Now, researchers studied the last words of flight crews on the black box recordings made just before the planes crashed. Overwhelmingly, the last thing the pilots and co-pilots said was this: a lot of people believe that there is nothing wrong with swearing. In fact, a lot of articles claim that swearing is good for health, helps to release pent-up emotions. But if you want to manage emotions, meditation is a much better choice. When you swear on a regular basis, what do you think will happen when you use harsh speech on someone? The amount of profanities will shoot sky high, and you will come across as even more hostile and intimidating. Now we are going to see the repercussions of harsh speech on the person who receives it. Now, physical abuse is always thought to impose more harm than verbal abuse. But many studies have shown that verbal aggression and abuse can also cause great psychological damage when the person subjected to harsh speech does not have the power to withdraw or to avoid it. It applies not just to children, but also to adults. John Gottman, a professor in psychology, conducted studies on positive and negative exchanges between spouses. He put a ratio of 5:1, meaning it takes 5 good things or exchanges to be able to lessen the impact of 1 bad speech. That does not include cancelling out the memory of the negative event. So this shows that it's easier to forgive than to forget. That is why it is very common for many divorce petitions my team had drafted to have a listing of all the verbal abuse. Verbal abuse is labeled by the victim, received throughout the marriage during quarrels with such clarity, I kid you not. Now, researchers have a link between the way employees are treated by the manager and their health. Workers who were treated unjustly, including being subjected to harsh speech, had a 41% risk of sickness absence than those treated well. Now, a child suffering from verbal abuse exhibits short-term effects like inferiority complex, deteriorating mental and physical performance. If the verbal abuse is allowed to continue on a regular basis, the child will suffer from these. Health is bad because in such situation, the child tends to overeat or stop eating altogether, affects growth and development of bones, muscles, and vital organs. A professor at Harvard Medical School found that when a child is born into a safe, attentive, and nurturing environment, the child's brain develops normally. But when the child is born into a family which is either unsupportive or hostile, the brain does not. Which part of the brain is affected? Yes, the corpus callosum. It's the breach of nervous tissues that allows communication between 2 sides of the brain. We also have this part of the brain, hippocampus, affected. Now, the hippocampus is jingled in memory processes, limbic system, a group of interconnected deep brain structures, including the amygdala that is involved in emotion, motivation, behavior, and various involuntary functions. Other studies also point to structural change in the gray matter of the brain when there is verbal abuse. I think all of you are very familiar with this now. The next slide. So what are the karmic repercussions of harsh speech? Harsh speech, repeatedly pursued, developed, and cultivated, is conducive to hell, to the animal realm, and to the sphere of afflicted spirits. And for one reborn as a human being, harsh speech at minimum conduces to disagreeable sounds. The minimum result in a human rebirth is hearing disagreeable things. So for the action to be karmically effective, there must be 3 factors, right? There must be a person who is abused or cursed. You must have ill will against that person and the intention to abuse or curse. So we will stop here. And next week, I will touch on with how to reduce harsh speech because this is very important. Okay, I'm open to questions now. Okay. Right.
Yeah, brothers and sisters. Oh, okay, great. We have a first question ready.
Right.
Okay, in our mundane lives, especially at work, we sometimes have to wear different masks and facing different people. Even when we meet people that we dislike or are enemies, we pretend to smile and to be friendly. Is hypocrisy considered to lie to ourselves because we are not staying true to ourselves?
Is it your true nature to always get angry and to use harsh speech at other people? No, what's your true nature? If you are practice the Dharma, you know the Dharma, you know that there's nothing in this entire universe you can control, right? You can't control how your colleagues act, what goes into their mind. You can't control tsunami, you can't control the traffic, you can't even control this body. Even while I'm talking to you, we're both aging, until the day the heart stops beating, we don't want to die, also must die. So the only thing that you have control of is the way you think, your mind. So why are you going to worry about other people? Just look at your intentions in your mind. People you like, you don't like, you have suffering. Isn't that craving for what they should be or craving for what they should not be? You protect this mental space. You treat other people with metta. Metta means kindness. And what does kindness mean? A non-judgmental mind. They are what they are. You treat people civilly. Right? You go to work to perform a task. You work mindfully, happily. Whether you're happy or not, you still have to go to the office, right? So choose to work happily. And just be very mindful. It's not about going to work and you have to like everybody. You don't have to. Neither is it important. You do your work, you're civil, you keep to your precepts, all right? You don't offend people, you don't hurt yourself, you don't hurt others. You don't have to worry about tomorrow. I hope I have answered that. Oh, well. Yeah, not hypocrisy. Go back to your true nature. Yeah. And suffering comes from the narratives of the mind. Live one day at a time and live today most happily. Mindfully, and you take care of tomorrow already. And when tomorrow comes, you have a very good yesterday. That's how life should be lived. 活在当下. No questions, is it? Okay. I'm a divorce lawyer. I'm done divorce and family work for 30 years. And I can tell you, sometimes it is, why do people divorce one another? It's not so much the act itself. Let's say, for example, husband cheats on the wife and apologizes. And if he says, I'm sorry, I know how you feel, validate the feelings, trust me, 9 out of 10, they will forgive. But sometimes it didn't happen this way because of the harsh speech. It's the word that was used. Like, for example, why do you cheat? How can you do this to me? Then defensiveness come in and the husband says words that hurt. Like, for example, look at you. Have you been a very good wife? Or, have you been doing this? Harsh speech was used. It's usually the harsh speech that actually caused the breakdown of the marriage, not so much itself the act. Now, for a spousal relationship, can you imagine every time you use the harsh speech, it's like a crack on the wall. It just goes like that, click, click, click. And the crack can go very deep. Remember what I shared with you earlier? Can forgive, no? Can't forget. Now, the crack that goes so deep, it takes very hard to cement it back. So it's very important I use spousal relationship because your spouse is the person closest to you. So it's very, very important that we do not use harsh speech. And harsh speech can be something like this. When men talk to women or women talk to men, right? The first thing that comes out is this, you, why you do this? You like that? You always start with you. That in itself is very hard because the you comes is like an attack. Then what do you expect the recipient to do? The defensiveness come up and say, they become very defensive. And then you explain. Then you're starting to fight over views. Now, if you don't exercise harsh speech, you meditate every day, okay? Your mindfulness in the forefront. When you're not happy, you know straight away is your unmet needs, all right? Or because you have a need. Then, because you're mindful, you're able to express yourself very well. I would be very much happier if you're able to do this. It's my feelings, I feel this and I would be happier or not. You talk about your feelings, you start with I. You don't start with you. You understand? So these are the subtleties that you have to be mindful of. So harsh speech, the definition is very wide. Yeah. This is a little bit of sharing.
Yeah, we have
Yes.
two more questions.
Yeah.
In my course of work, I face harsh speech regularly, mostly from clients, staying mindful and patient most of the time. But in one or two occasions, it breaks out. How can this happen? And what is your advice on such incidents?
Okay, you know the successful people in sales, successful people in selling services, right? They are not personal. It's a job, correct? Okay, now between husband and wife, very best friends, right? Quarrels start easier, right? Conflict starts easier, right? Because you take things very personally and then you have this long emotional baggage. So when someone uses harsh speech, straight away, because your emotional baggage, the retaliation comes. Because when you come with people, 你有执着的话呢, you have more expectations and you have more aversion, right? Because of the emotional baggage. Now, when you're talking to a client, why should it be personal? It is just a transaction and you need to get the job done. It is not about your expectations. It's not about your aversion. You don't have a history. So let's say, for example, even the most difficult clients, when you're mindful, you know that this client is unreasonable. You know that this client probably have a very noisy mind, don't know the Dhamma type. And the person is angry, so the person is suffering. All right? And you're able to be so impersonal, you're able to pour water over the fire, right? Now, fire burning on wood, does it burn forever? No, what? After a while, fire will just go off because the wood can't burn forever. 无常嘛，对吗? But you let it burn on its own, it will just die off, correct? Don't pour oil. If you're going to pour oil because you exercise in retaliation, harsh speech, because of your own needs, right? Your own motivations, then you have explosion, no? You learn how to pour water. That's when skills come in. So the person is angry. You know now, you attended this class already, right? You know why the person is angry, because the person have an unmet need. The person is angry because the person want to express a need. Then because you're not personal, you look at what exactly are the needs. Now you see, I'm a mediator of the Singapore Mediation Center. I mediate also divorce cases. Usually when you have a husband and wife facing each other, there's a lot of aversion. And they fight over custody, they fight over children, and things like that. Now, as a mediator, I look at both husband and wife. I don't look at what they say, because what they say is positions. Sometimes come with harsh speech, okay? It's very rough, like, okay, I want custody, I want custody, I want this, you shouldn't do this. So you look at it as a mediator, because I'm personal, I look at their needs. What the position is here, the needs is underneath, the interests, promoting that position. Both love the children, isn't it? Both of them have a common goal. Both of them love the children. So I don't look at the surface. I look underneath the needs and unmet needs. So I will ask questions like that. Okay. What do you hope? What do you want the children to have? They both will answer same things. All right. What are your wishes for the children, for their future? Same thing. Then you bring the couples to the common goal, asking questions to facilitate the settlement. Correct? So let's say if you are in sales, if you're in services industry, the best salesperson, the best service provider is one that is calm. Right? A mind with no judgment, see things as they are and deal with it. Okay? I hope I've answered your question. Right?
Okay, thank you. Next question.
Yes.
In workplace, harsh managers often produce better results than a Mr. Nice manager. Is it true?
Well, the harsh manager will produce different results because I think people work out of fear. Now, I rather not hire people who work out of fear. I rather hire people who are motivated to do the job. Now, I don't use harsh speech in my department. And my department is the biggest in the matrimonial department, right? Staff also quite a lot. And 100 lawyers actually in my firm, and none of the partners use harsh speech. So I don't see why you need to use harsh speech. You want to motivate your employees. You want to be able to them to come to work happily in a safe environment. They get motivated, they have loyalty, they work harder, and we reward according to whether they meet their billing targets or not. For me, I feel that we spend a lot of time with our colleagues. We spend a lot of time more with our colleagues than actually our spouse, because our spouse is just nighttime, right? Whole day you're in the office space. You want to make that space a very safe, good environment. So I don't agree with that statement, actually. Yeah. I mean, you can tell from a company the turnover rate. Right? You have bosses who do not exercise harsh speech, right? People stay with you for a long time, and you like experienced workers, isn't it? Because they can contribute more. They're familiar, they're faster, they're more productive. Yeah. Yeah, I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, next question from YouTube.
Yes.
If I have performed harsh speech last time and now repent, what is the best way should I do to rebuild relationships? Should I apologize to more personally?
Yeah. Do more good. All right? Do more good. Increase the goodness. Perform meritorious deeds. Okay? Like, for example, what you're doing now in BAPS, right? Participating in BAPS, listening to the Dhamma, correcting your views. All right? You did puja in the beginning. All right? Shared merits, rejoice in other people's merits. These are all meritorious deeds. So the next time, when you meditate, okay, just now you also meditated for 15 minutes. Now, all these things will help to decondition your mind. Now, this deconditioning of mind is a very important meritorious deed. So the next time when you see that person, right, what that comes up from your mannerisms, your facial expression, your language, is very easily is one that's non-judgmental. You're able to apologize easily. I'm so sorry, if I had offended you by harsh speech, advertently or inadvertently, I'm sorry. Do you know to say sorry, is actually very difficult to most people, because it's pride, the ego, the delusion, the sense of self. So if you continue to perform good things, all right, practice the Dhamma. Remember, the Dhamma is to learn, to practice, right, and to realize. You will find it very easy to have a non-judgmental mind. You find it very easy to apologize for wrongs. You find it very easy to pour water over fire. You find it very easy not to get personal and not retaliate straight away. You're able, remember Ajahn Suchito say, easy for you to count to 10 before responding. Yeah.
Okay. Another question from YouTube. We can forgive, but it's hard to forget. How do we heal the memory?
You know something? The past only comes alive when you think about it, right?
Yes.
Isn't it? Past is the past. It's not important. It's over. Some people have a very traumatic childhood, and they let the traumatic childhood affect them. So they go to see therapists like America, right? They go see therapists and counselors month after month, because they simply cannot let go, because they keep thinking about it again and again and again. So let's say, for example, someone call you stupid. Your colleague call you stupid. You really bo shock. Why you call me stupid? You went back home and you tell your husband about it. My colleague call me stupid. I'm not happy about it. Then the next day, you saw another colleague who is a best friend, and you told your colleague, do you know that person called me stupid? Then 1 week later, you saw your parents who asked you how you've been. Everything okay? You said no, because me and my colleague not so good. She called me stupid. Do you know you have successfully called yourself stupid 3 more times? So you let your enemy enter your mind and just live inside there. So we don't let strangers come into our home, right? People who can come into our home to steal, to kill, people you don't like, you don't open the door for them. Why do you let your memories, the bad memories, enter your mind door? Okay, I hope that gives you a perspective for you to reflect on. Let go.
Yeah, very good advice. Okay. This one is from Brother Chongling. Chongling, yes. And he wants to say thank you, sister, and shall put in practice.
Oh,
Maintain calmness seems going to be a lifelong practice. Sadhu.
yes, yes. Noble Eightfold Path is a lifelong practice. All right. Even after you got your first insight, first fruition or whatever, you have to continue your practice. What is your goal in life? Your goal in life, some of you may say enlightenment. Okay. But some, I just want to experience the higher happiness that comes from peace and tranquility and equanimity. That's higher happiness. That's not dependent on external circumstance. All right. Happiness comes from your reaction to the external circumstances. So you cultivate this mind, achieve that higher one, higher. And some may say, I just want to have a better rebirth. Whatever your goal, all right, that will determine how you think, how you act, and what you say. Yes.
Any more questions?
No questions is also good. I take it I was very clear during the presentation.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the slides helps a lot.
Yes.
Very well presented. Thank you.
I think I should be stopping the screen, stop share, that we can see everybody. Then yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, because harsh speech is not much emphasized. People don't emphasize on harsh speech a lot. Actually, the whole right speech series is that most people spend a lot of time meditating, study and learning the Dhamma. But a lot of the practice in the Noble Eightfold Path, speech is very important because we talk every day, right?
Yeah.
So the practice of exercising restraint, you can get a lot out of it. Right? It's harder than just the 5 precepts. 5 precepts for speech. Now I explained to you 4 speech are really quite tough. You must avoid white lies. Now you have 4 to restrain from. Then you realize you don't need to talk very much. Then you realize that it's relatively pretty quiet. Then you realize when you go for a Noble precept retreat with noble silence, no problem. Yeah. Yes. So then you only talk when you can improve the silence. So actually, it's a very peaceful life. A lot of conflicts, a lot of disagreement, a lot of 误解, misunderstanding, all this usually comes from speech. Yeah. So we start with the household first. So those brothers and sisters who are married, please exercise kind speech to each other, because spouse take themselves for granted. Yeah, just pause and talk. Yeah. Okay, so it's something for your reflections.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Siew Fong. Can I invite you to do
Yes, let's dedicate merits, okay?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, put your hands in Jali and just close your eyes and let's, okay. By the grace of this merit that I have acquired by our puja, our meditation, and learning the Dhamma, may I never associate with the foolish, but only the wise up to the time I attain final happiness. And by the grace of whatever merits that I have acquired, may these be helpful to eradicate the defilements and overcome all sufferings. May all the merits I have accumulated today be shared with my departed relatives. May they be well and happy, and may they continue in the path towards the eradication of suffering. By the power of Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, may all the Devas protect me, and may there be blessings to me. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.